Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Massive story today. Lewis Hamilton reportedly puts his new Ferrari in the barriers, testing the SF-23 at Barcelona towards the end of the session. At around about 11 AM this morning, local time, Hamilton puts his Ferrari SF-23 in the wall around Barcelona in a crash, which is obviously not ideal for anyone involved. The reality is, however, that Hamilton, the last two times he tested before debut with the team, back at Mercedes in 2013, he won the championship the next year. Back at McLaren 2007, he won the championship next year. Is this a bad sign to Hamilton or a potential sign of things to come? Again, pushing hard on the day. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. We're going to start right about here with Yuki Tsunoda being, well, we saw rumours yesterday. Now it's like Autosport understands this will be the case. He's going to be their reserve driver. More to say on Red Bull as well. There is this one on, again, we're on Blue Sky here. But the RB21 passing the relevant crash test. We see this during the end of last year, certainly the start of this season now, about teams passing the relevant test to make sure the cars are homologated to actually drive in Formula 1. That's now been confirmed for the RB21. We don't know whether it, failed them before and has now passed them, because that's what happened, I think, last year, maybe the year before, when Red Bull were pushing the limits, shall we say, on how much weight they could get away with having. But yeah, the car is locked in, no problems going on there. The other piece of news, however, is that Johnny Herbert is gone. Now, we've talked a lot about Johnny Herbert over the last couple of seasons as a steward in Formula 1, and, well, let's say last season especially, there were multiple instances of Herbert as a media pundit making his opinion known on certain matters, and Herbert was quite clear that, in his opinion, he can have his opinion on various topics, and it doesn't affect his ability to, properly police and govern the sport and give relevant opinions when it comes to unbiased assessments in the stewarding room. Maybe the FIA, however, disagrees. He made that comment last week. We looked at it in a video a few days ago where Johnny Herbert said that in his ideal perfect scenario, Hamilton would win the title because it's just going to be a great story. And fair enough. But obviously, we looked at that and we said, can we be convinced that Herbert is entirely unbiased with these type of comments? He also works with, certain, I think there's like a gambling sponsor that he works with that he's kind of at times using his punditry to promote. So it's things like this that make you think, okay, the stewarding in the FIA is an unpaid job. So I want to give the guys a benefit of the doubt, but I also don't understand how it can possibly be an unpaid job with the amount of money that's going around in this sport. And Zach Brown has some thoughts on that as well. I know that Johnny Herbert, of course, he was never exactly pro-Max. Whether he was anti-Max is a debate, I suppose, that Max may have. But I think the reality was that at times when Herbert was questioned on his maybe integrity and his ability to properly govern the sports, he was like, oh, well, some of these guys, the McLaren guys, they think I'm perfectly unbiased and perfectly fine. But maybe that doesn't speak for everyone. So the FIA confirmed today, it is with regrets that we announced today that Johnny Herbert will no longer fulfill the position of F1 driver steward. Johnny is widely respected and brought invaluable experience and expertise to the role. However, after discussion, whether that's with him or with themselves, it was mutually agreed, okay, with him then, that his duties as an FIA steward and that of a media pundit were incompatible. We thank him for his service and wish him well. So, yeah, quite the assessment, really. I saw this assessment from RBR Daily when they saw he was getting fired and, Max's potential response to that. So, look, Johnny Herbert's gone. Are there other stewards that also have, I wouldn't say questionable integrity, but are there other stewards where you can look at their past and what they currently are up to and what they may have done and may do in the future and say, could they have some favoritism towards a certain team or certain driver? You certainly can, and we've done that before, and we probably will do it again. And this is why Zach Brown is being very clear that, in his opinion, changes need to be made. Even to the extent where his team, would be happy to pay the wages of the guys to make this happen. Now, first of all, that is a serious conflict of interest if McLaren were the team, as in the only team or one of very few teams, to actually be funding this stuff. Because the stewards, they get chosen weekend to weekends and they make money in other ways, but they don't tend to make money as stewards at all. So Zach Brown's saying, yeah, McLaren, we're happy to fund the stewards. But of course, if you're a steward and your salary is getting paid by McLaren, not the FIA, which is, first of all, an FIA question. Why can't they afford it? I mean, they say that the fine money goes somewhere useful, but it still sums up their organisation is pretty dysfunctional when your stewards in a sport as big as Formula 1 don't even get paid. Like, what are we talking about here? So McLaren are saying, if you guys can't pay, we'll pay, but then surely the other teams would also have to chip in, because otherwise there's a conflict of interest that can't be upheld at that point. So that's what people are talking about on the day. Obviously, people are making jokes about it as well, and some of the bias or non-bias that may or may not exist at the moment. But let's talk about Ferrari and how Hamilton's been getting on, because we know they're being very aggressive with their changes for this year's car. And I'm sure they also want Hamilton and Leclerc to be very aggressive with their current driving of the SF-23 to make sure that they're wringing every last bit of understanding, a bit of performance out of that car so they can go forwards. We know that Loic Serra is now in charge over there. He's calling a lot of the shots from a technical direction perspective. I think he's got a more technical name than that. But effectively, that's kind of where he sits in the org now. And as a result of that, he wants to understand as much as possible. He's taken over the ship in some regard, and Hamilton's taken over one of the driver's seats. So they're making big changes. There was even talk today from De Kester and everyone else about how they are changing the front axle, right? So they're changing to a pull rod front suspension design. That's what every team that's won championships over the last few years has done. Obviously, Red Bull and McLaren have both employed that concept. The article also said that they're seeing benefits from doing this. From like an aerodynamic perspective, how many benefits? I guess time will tell when they hit the track, but they're pretty confident Ferrari. They've done the right thing here, and it is going to work out in their favour. But also, this is the SF-23, right? A car from a couple of years ago. They're trying to glean as much information from as they can. Yesterday, the talk was it's about tyres, and it's about practice starts. It's about understanding the traction, the acceleration zones, getting a more effective start. That seems to be some of the areas where Ferrari are focusing, but also they want to do some long runs and they want to do some push laps as well. And also Hamilton will want to do some long runs and some push laps as well to, see how he fares in a car that was pretty tricky. Like, it was obviously a good quality car, but the Ferraris of the last few years, certainly 22 and 23, were tricky to their drivers, right? I mean, Sainz and Leclerc had multiple instances where they were in the wall or in serious damage because their car would not comply as they would like to under, especially high-speed corners. That may have been what we saw today with Hamilton. So these are the pictures of today, Hamilton on the track and Leclerc on the track, or maybe from yesterday, I don't know. But it's not like we get much information here. And as yet, we've not seen any images or anything of this crash that Hamilton has had, but it is nonetheless a rather big deal. Even Hamilton said this, I thought was pretty interesting, and I don't know if they're the only driver pairing, but we know that Charles Leclerc, he learned from Vettel how Vettel would always take notes on certain things. Hamilton does the same thing, actually. Hamilton says, since Formula Renault, I take notes every single weekend. Every time I drive the car, I'm making notes because you're not going to remember it all. There's just too much going on. Leclerc does the same thing, so maybe one of the reasons why these guys are going to be a rather good pairing next year. But there was also this. So on the positive note, Hamilton's been talking about the braking and where exactly he lost the car today. We'll discuss what that could be in a second. But it probably wasn't under braking. And obviously we know that Hamilton's big strength in Formula 1 is his ability on the brakes. And apparently he's rather satisfied with the way that the Ferrari feels compared to the way that the Mercedes has felt over the last couple of years under braking. It is known that his comments after the Fiorano test, and not even after yesterday or today, but after Fiorano, the comments are very positive, especially regarding the solution to his braking problems in 2024. Perhaps it will suit him better now and the car will turn in for him during braking as he likes, which hindered him in the ground effect car so far. In the case of Lewis, he is adapting to Ferrari's Brembo brake system after previously using Carbon Industries discs at Mercedes with Brembo pads and calipers. It was said at the time that he had requested this change from Ferrari, but according to what Massa has learned, the demand never existed. So it seems like he's pretty happy with it. What is known is that his comments after the Fiorano test have been very positive, especially regarding the solution to his braking problems in 2024. Perhaps it will suit him better now, and we discussed that sentence already. He's also working on adapting to the response of the power unit, which differs quite a lot in terms of architecture. We mentioned that as well before. Different center of gravity in the engine. So lots of things that, of course, he's got to get used to. But the point being that that seems Hamilton's pretty satisfied with the way that their car is going and maybe feels like there's more performance to strip from it than otherwise was the case. And as a result of that, Hamilton, probably pushing rather hard, ended up in the wall today. As I say, we've seen no images of this because it's pretty much under wraps, this event from Ferrari. It's pretty being kept in secret what they're up to, what they're working on. But yeah, Hamilton was involved in a crash, spinning into the barriers while testing the SF-23 in Barcelona. The team has said Lewis is fine, but the car was damaged for sure. So reportedly, in the final sector of the track, at around 11 in the morning, Hamilton lost control of the car and went into the barriers. Hamilton's fine, the car maybe not so fine, and some damage done that needed some resolutions. I think they probably got it done by the time that Leclerc was going to be in the car in the afternoon, so it can't have been, major, but the article described it as fairly significant damage to the suspension and some aerodynamic parts. So that's interesting, whether he crashed like frontward or rearward, because, suspension could be either really, but presumably there wasn't too much hassle, and also it is an old car, so if you are going to crash any Ferrari, it probably had better be the one that they don't really need anymore, rather than a newer one. But still, it'll be interesting if we hear any more thoughts on this in due course, because obviously this was toward the end of Hamilton's run in the morning, so it's like he got plenty of laps in before then the car was in the wall, hit the protective barriers. The car had, and it means, so Leclerc's afternoon shift will start very late. So it definitely took them hours to resolve the issues that had caused the damage on the car, and I'm sure they'll look into all the telemetry and the details on it. This is the circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. And, well, Sector 1 starts here with the start-finish line. Sector 1 finishes, I think it finishes here, does it? Just before Turn 4. So I think that's the end of Sector 1. And then Sector 2 finishes just before Turn 10. So Sector 3 is this part of the track here, Turn 10, 11, 12, 13. And if I had to guess, there's two places he could have lost it. Either at Turn 12, the now very fast speed right-hander, where, the reason why they got rid of that corner and put the chicane there instead was because it's pretty dangerous. But if Hamilton actually lost it there, going round the corner, high speed to the right, because this circuit, there's not many places you can crash it, really. There's places you can lose the car, but there's not many places you can crash. Like, if you go off at Turn 1, there's so much runoff area, you're not crashing. There's only a few corners where crashing is even possible, one of which is Turn 7, Turn 8. If you lose it there on the curb, you can spin into the wall. Turn 9, there's so much runoff. Turn 10, there's so much runoff. It's Turn 11 or Turn 12, because if you lose it at Turn 12, even 13 is possible, but unlikely. But if you lose it at Turn 12, you can be off into the wall. But you're off into the wall at serious pace, and that car is probably a write-off within reason. I think what's more likely is that he lost it on Turn 11, possibly just under acceleration. It is a bit of a tricky corner. You've got to be very much hovering on the throttle, and if Hamilton just thought he had a bit more rear grip than he did, then especially if you're on a curb or something, or even if you mount the curb a bit too much on the exit, you can lose the car and spin into the barriers, because the barriers are very close to Turn 11. So if I had to guess where he went off, it was there. I don't imagine that it was a major incident at massively high speed. I imagine it was exit of Turn 11, lost the car into the barriers, and maybe minor damage to the rear wing and the rear suspension, but something that took them time to fix, but Hamilton was fine nonetheless. But still, it's a big deal, right? I mean, Hamilton, starred man now at Ferrari, has joined the team, and he's doing his pretty much first proper test with the team here. Fiorano was a bit of a warm-up act, really. This is, 50, 60 laps a day of quality running, trying to learn things and totally understand the car. And he's crashed the car. It's not ideal. But it's not the first time this has happened. The last two times Hamilton joined a team, he crashed their car before the season, before he made his debut. So in 2007 in Valencia, he crashed his McLaren before he debuted for the team. Next year, 2008, he won the championship. In 2013, he crashed his Mercedes at Jerez. And then next year he won the championship. So, who knows? But I'm just saying that it wouldn't be the first time that Hamilton is, he's very consistent. He does a test with the team before he's, debuted at the car. He crashes, and then he wins championships for the team. That's, that's what's happened before. Will it happen again? I guess it's a matter for debate. But I think it is true that, it's not all negatives here, right? The car was at times a bit of a diva, the SF-23. It's not like the drivers they had at the time weren't putting in the wall sometimes, because they were. were. It is a bit of a tricky car, and Hamilton, I'm sure, is figuring that out and has more to learn than those guys did because he's getting up to speed with the machine. Also proves he's confident enough to push it hard. Imagine that he was taking that pretty aggressively to make an error and, a crash-inducing error such as this. So that's an important point to take as well, and the discussion on the brakes and some of the potential positivity there. It's not like it's all negatives here today, but, certainly the headlines will have been made. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Just one final thing, couple more driver rankings. Yesterday we saw that 7th, I believe, went to, so 8th I think was Gasly, 7th was Fernando Alonso, and in 6th they've gone for Oscar Piastri, of course multiple race winner last year, and at times excellent, but just a bit too far off Lando, I would say, to really go too much higher up the order. But number 6, can Piastri get better this upcoming season? Absolutely. What's that going to look like for McLaren? That is a matter for debate, and we'll see where these other drivers, the likes of Russell, Leclerc, I would say Russell, Leclerc, Norris, and then Verstappen, although, those are the final 4 drivers. I think my order would be probably Russell, Norris, Leclerc, and then Verstappen. I think you could actually argue that maybe Norris is 4th, because to me, I think it's quite clear that Leclerc and Verstappen should be 2nd and 1st, and I think you can argue whether Russell was better than Lando this year. I think it's an argument. You can also, I guess, argue whether Lando was better than Charles, and some people would say that he was. And if you look at Driver of the Day rankings, then yeah, sure, Lando smoked everyone. But the reality is that in terms of maximising potential week on week, which is pretty much what these rankings are all about, it wasn't done by Norris as often as it was done by Leclerc in my eyes. So we'll see how race fans conclude that. I think Max has to be 1st. In my opinion, I think Leclerc kind of has to be 2nd. But I think you can argue it a couple of different ways. But intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Science gets 5th in the end. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.